And the problem is everyone's got an idea, but nobody has balls to bring it to market. And the thing is, it's like, this is where I like to call this instinctual entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurship, you go to the best schools out there, you go to Stanford, whatever, and try to become an entrepreneur. And the fact is, you're not learning entrepreneurship. You're learning, more or less business tactics to make a business work. The fact is, entrepreneurship is more than tactics. It's an instinctual feeling to where, you know when to step. You don't have a fear to proceed. You know what ideas are going to work, what's not going to work. Even if they don't work, you don't take it as a failure. You take it as a step forward.
Welcome to the Pivotal Leader Podcast with Gina Trimarco, featuring lively interviews with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their stories and best practices for shifting business from problems to profits. Sit back and get ready to pivot.
Hey everybody, this is Gina Trimarco, Chief Results Officer of Pivot 10 Results. Each week on the Pivotal Leader, I feature inspirational leaders who know how to positively impact their customers, employees, and brand through culture building. On this episode of the Pivotal Leader, I interviewed Paul Szyarto. Paul is a globally recognized expert in entrepreneurship, business leadership, and self-defense. He is highly sought after for his executive coaching and business leadership training, known for applying the principles of Krav Maga. It's the Israeli self-defense system into everyday business and life scenarios. Paul has trained hundreds of law enforcement professionals and groups of NFL players, in addition to business executives and entrepreneurs. He grew up on the streets of New Jersey, surrounded by violence, without guidance, in a home filled with dysfunction from an abusive alcoholic, drug-using father who attempted to kill his mother at the age of 12. Most people don't survive these situations. Core values supported Paul to rise from the violence, abuse, and poverty in his life to become an Oxford University and Wharton graduate who is known for his abilities as a CEO, entrepreneur, and mentor. He is also one of the world's foremost experts in project management and data analytics, with a track record for delivering some of the world's largest corporate project initiatives. Beyond transforming a diverse array of public and private organizations into highly efficient operations, Paul mentors entrepreneurs and teaches Krav Maga and tactical training as the combat CEO at VMMA, his high-intensity interval training-based self-defense school. There's so much more in this upcoming episode that I can't wait to hear. So let's pivot our way to my interview with Paul. All right, Paul, thank you so much for joining me on the Pivotal Leader today.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
Before we get started, I hope you don't mind if I do this. Just indulge me. I was going through your website, and so I want to read this, if you don't mind, so that our listeners can hear this, because it was probably the most compelling thing of everything that I had on you. So here it goes. It says, at 5, he was bartering in school for toys. 7 was selling custom design pencils. 8 became the candy man, making $200 plus per week to help pay for rent and food. 13 began refurbishing and selling car parts. 15 had a dozen, quote, associates, end quote, selling radios. 17, he joined the Navy for electrical engineering and ended tracking terrorists. 20, was living in Italy and attending college in Europe. 21, graduated with his master's degree. 22, sold his first business. 23, made his first million. 27, he was building an international company with cumulative revenues over 95 million. 31, earned his second master's degree. 32, helped dozens of entrepreneurs succeed. 34, invented Delcon to manage 50 billion in client capital. 35, started his doctoral studies. 36, he was teaching business at the Wharton School of UPenn. 37, earned a black belt in martial arts. 38, began franchising MMA facilities. And today he continues to build a diverse $1 million companies while mentoring thousands of followers in how to excel in life and business by applying his simple core values. I'm exhausted.
I think I missed a couple things. So
I'm exhausted. I was like,
look,
wow.
I'm more exhausted than you are listening to it. So it's like, wow. Yeah, I've done quite a few things. Yeah.
That's like, I read that and I'm like, I really don't know where to start with this. So we'll start somewhere, we'll end somewhere. Maybe we'll do another one of these.
Yeah, sure.
There's so much. So a couple little details. I laugh at myself when I pre-record intros and I don't find out certain things. Like how do you say your last name?
It's Szyarto. So you can't look at it when you say it.
Okay, so I totally butchered it in the intro, so that's fine. Szyarto.
It's okay.
Now that sounds Italian when you say it like that.
It's actually Hungarian, and there's a whole story behind that because from what I understand, my dad changed his name at some point, and I wound up with a changed name, but I don't know the true story. All I know is I'm a Szyarto now.
Okay.
So, and I think it's from Hungarian descent.
I laugh at myself when I do these and I say, I already butchered and said, I don't know if I'm saying this right. We'll find out. So these principles, this Israeli self-defense system, I'm not going to try to say it because I've already tried it twice in the intro. How do you say it?
Krav Maga.
Okay. Oh, good. Well, I got it. I think I got it right. Okay, good.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay, couple details there. So I don't even know where to honestly get started with you because of this background, but I was so intrigued and fascinated by you. There were a lot of things that made me kind of giggle because I grew up with an Italian dad who had some associates, and I believe that I was one of those associates but didn't know it.
Yeah.
He had us working in flea markets selling hot items, and we didn't know it as children.
So you understand the term associates. So
I do.
There's a whole family relationship and everything that goes along with that. So
yeah, it's like I fell in love with you right there because I'm like, he'll get me. He'll totally get me. I mean, my dad had us selling members only jackets at age 10, and I thought that was cool, but I think they were hot. So. That's another story for another time. So 20 years, 600 plus clients, billions managed. Let's dive into what are you doing now? What is going on with Paul? Just give us kind of an overview of like what's happening at this moment in time that you can feel free to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, today, it's, as the story continues, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I have my hands in several pots. I think it's probably 16 pots right now, to where I'm doing things like, I kind of focus things on like a primary activity and secondary activity, when it comes to streams of revenue. And I'd say my primary activity is going to be project management, strategy-based consulting. So I work with a company called Companion Shot. From a U.S. side, I'm one of the owners, and they actually purchased my assets from a previous company. So I came in, and I've been working with them to kind of expand, their philosophy on project management, consulting, and software development, and so on. It's not a huge company. There's about 400 resources, 17 locations or so. Throughout the world. But in addition to that, so that's my primary activity. And, that's one of my great passions, focusing on, project management, general consulting, strategy work, very complex technical architectures with typically, mid-size and large companies. So, the Airbuses, Lufthansas, Bayers, Roche and stuff like that. So that's my primary. And then from a secondary, in the past, I would only have, maybe one or two, but I figured out a way to kind of delegate and leverage really good resources to where I can be the visionary and put a plan in place and, start getting the engine, built, starting it, start the engine running. And then from there, I don't operate it. I more or less, supervise the operation in a way. Okay. And I have things to where my, large secondary is, I do martial arts. So I've always done martial arts for, all my life pretty much. In the military, I did something called MICMAP, which is like the U.S. Krav Maga. And I would say when I turned, I think it was 27, 28, something like that. I said to myself, I just sold one of these companies. What am I going to do? I want to do something that I enjoy. Let me turn my hobby into a business, of course. Like what noodlehead does that? So, I started building.
I did that.
I know, right? Why would we do that? I mean, take something you enjoy, and now you got to worry about revenue. So I started building mixed martial arts facilities it's just a completely different way of thinking about martial arts. In the fact that most martial arts facilities, they have, a single sensei or instructor, and then they, you get bored and then you move on. For me, I wanted to have it super diverse. I wanted to study the different strategies in the arts. And so I just brought everything into one house, like capoeira and, Kempo, Taekwondo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga. And now I have all these like top instructors that are building curriculum, and started with one facility. You know, now we have, I think, 6 facilities. Now we just started franchising. Every time I travel the world, fighting with all these top fighters. So,
wait. When do you have free time?
You know something? It's there is no free time, but you know, there's I have this weird philosophy on time to where if there's 24 hours in a day, we need to pretty much leverage 19 of them to be productive in some way. So,
we're like from the same cloth.
I don't sleep much, so it's like if I'm not sleeping, I'm doing something. So, but yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Those are my like primary activities. And I do stuff with like social media. I do some stuff with drones. I do some stuff with, I don't know. There's too much to talk about. I got a fund, like a tech fund. So, so I do a lot of stuff, a lot of fun stuff.
Let's go back to the MMA facilities. What are they called? I didn't hear it.
It's called VMMA. And
VMMA.
I actually built it with a guy named Mike Vaca. So the V stands for Vaca. So Vaca Modern Martial Arts, and he was kind of like he kind of founded this new strategy on martial arts to where, combining a lot of these core techniques, and kind of built it, dedicating it to him. He was my Shihan, let's call it, the master from martial arts for me. And he's kind of the curriculum guy. I was the operator, came through with a vision, and now we're kind of franchising. So, and since then I've integrated it with top fighters and martial artists around the world. I just had this guy Eyal Yanilov from Israel. He's like one of the founders of Krav Maga over here in Pennsylvania. So it's pretty neat.
When did you guys start it?
VMMA started in 2016. So
okay, so
probably
still fairly new, but growing.
Yeah, it's brand new. I mean, we're growing, and the Doylestown location is doing extremely well, and we're in the process of franchising now. We have like 26 locations that are in queue to build out over the next 12 plus months. So now I'm just trying to figure out, how do I take this hobby and now go build 26 more of them? Well,
that's a really great question. I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs that started with hobbies. We have a passion. Entrepreneurs typically are pretty creative. I actually are you familiar with the Culture Index?
Yep.
So I interviewed somebody who's a licensee for the Culture Index, and I let him do my report on the podcast. I wanted people to know who I am. And he said, well, let's talk about your attention span. You have the attention span of a mosquito chugging Red Bull.
Nice, right?
And I said, yeah, I'm doing laundry right now as we podcast for sure. Yeah. Multitasking. And then we talked about ingenuity and where I fell in that. And my ingenuity was so high in creating. He's like, you create so much. You have an idea like every minute. And the thing is, 7 out of your 10 ideas are insane. But the other 3 are going to be what wins, and people start to figure that out about you. So I think the creative people who are entrepreneurs, visionaries, we take these ideas and we run with them. But I'd love to hear your insight. There are a lot of people out there how do I turn the hobby into a scalable business? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I think it's a constant pain.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a really good question. I think what's happened right now in society is that the term, the definition entrepreneur has really, I think it's lost its luster in a way, because I think there's too many people that have the title of entrepreneur or claim to be entrepreneurs when in reality they're what I like to call an ideapreneur. Everyone has all these great ideas, and they come out with this. Hey, I got the next big idea to bring water to Africa, or or whatever. Even in the MMA world, everyone's got some kind of new system. And the problem is, everyone's got an idea, but nobody has the balls to bring it to market. And the thing is, it's like this is where I like to call this instinctual entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship, you go to the best schools out there, you go to Stanford, whatever, and try to become an entrepreneur. And the fact is, you're not learning entrepreneurship. You're learning, more or less business tactics to make a business work. The fact is entrepreneurship is more than tactics. It's an instinctual feeling to where, you know when to step. You don't have a fear to proceed. You know what ideas are going to work, what's not going to work. Even if they don't work, you don't take it as a failure, you take it as a step forward. For me, people that are looking to become entrepreneurs, fact is, you're either going to be an entrepreneur or you're not going to be an entrepreneur. Okay. There's a clear line between an entrepreneur and a business operator, so for those people that do have ideas, can they bring them to market? Are they entrepreneurs? I don't know.
Yeah.
Stop focusing on the idea and start creating a plan of action. I always tell these people, an idea based on passion is nothing. It's a waste of time. But if you can take that idea and start documenting and creating a tangible asset with the idea and create a plan of action to bring the idea into and make that, dream a reality. Look, that's a true entrepreneur. They have what it takes to make something happen when there's nothing there, so, and no one tells these people how to do it. They just figure it out. So.
Yeah, and you look at, again, this is why I was so attracted to what was on your website, the at 5 bartering in school for toys. A lot of podcast guests that I've had all have kind of these similar, at 5 and 7 and 10, I was doing these things. And it's kind of interesting if you look at children who have that spark in them, they're the ones who do grow up to be like us, that have that to go out. I mean, my dad made us work in the flea market, and then I was selling, it's funny, I was selling pens, not pencils, but pens. There was a store in my neighborhood that had these really unique pens, and they were like, I can't describe them, but they wobbled. You put them on and they wobble back and forth. And I bought them all up, and I made a deal with the store owner. I'm like, who am I? I made a deal with the store owner. It's I didn't get a discount.
That's cool. And
take them to school and sell them. And this was in grade school. I don't know where that comes from. I think part of it could be the way I was raised,
So let's touch on that a little bit. So I have this other philosophy. Let's throw another term out there. So we said entrepreneur, we said ideapreneur. Let's identify someone called a survivor-preneur. Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is where I'd say, where my track kind of started. So you got to think, I'm a young guy, a little boy, my dad was a complete maniac. All right. He was connected. He had associates. He was, he made money, a lot of cash. We never saw any of it. He was a super abusive, alcoholic, drug trafficking lunatic, right? And anytime he was around, he would abuse us in every way. And, my mother and 2 brothers, we would run, we would we knew he was around. We would move into another township,
Wow.
So we didn't have it was crazy. So we didn't have stable life of, okay, 5 o'clock dinner and, we're going to sit home and watch TV. No, that's not how it was. I go through this story about my first lesson in entrepreneurship to where, I remember I was sitting at school in kindergarten, right? I remember this guy, Daniel. He was playing with these G.I. Joe guys. It was 4-inch G.I. Joes. And I sat there by myself and I'm like, man, I wish I had a G.I. Joe guy, because I had nothing to contribute. So what happens as a kid? You have nothing to contribute, no toys. So you're the loser on the outskirts,
Yeah.
So
I've been there.
And right?
Yeah.
So, and I remember this one kid, he was making these paper Chinese stars. And he pegged me in the head with one. I started to cry like a little baby. And instead of him running away to shut me up, he showed me how to make this star. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then, something sparked in my head. I'm like, wow, this is neat. Now I have a toy. And I remember all the other kids wanted these stars, especially that kid with those G.I. Joes. And, I went home that night. I figured out how to make these things. I started making them and bagging them. And then I went to school and I started like negotiating to get some G.I. Joe guys with these bags of stupid paper stars, you know?
Oh my, brilliant.
Yeah. And, you know, if you think about it, I don't know if it was entrepreneurship or what, but at the time I had a need and I identified a gap in what people wanted, you know? So this kid wanted the Chinese stars. And I said, you know something? I could fulfill this gap. I did, you know? And then from that point on, I caught on really quickly that, hey, kids are dumb. They have wants, and they will give you certain things if you could fill those wants. This is like, you know, followed me through life, that business, being an entrepreneur, is about filling gaps also. You know, if you have an idea, make sure the idea fills a gap, you know, in someone's life. Mm-hmm. And then you need to understand the scalability of what you're filling. Don't just say, hey, I got a passion for these widgets, and I think one person wants a widget. Yeah. That's not a business. You know, that's not an entrepreneur. Yeah. That's a guy with an idea to build a widget. If you identify that 100,000 people could use this widget, why not? And how do you fill the gap?
But I think that's a big one. Identifying the needs versus and also the wants. A lot of times you're gonna encounter clients or customers who think they want one thing, but they need another thing. And sometimes you have to sell them what they want and then give them what they need because they don't want to admit what they need.
Yeah, I have a pretty cool philosophy too on the whole needs and wants. I mean, if anyone's looking to come to market with a grand idea, don't start with something people want. All right. Start with something people need. Because if you think about it, you know, you need water. All right. So if you look at Coca-Cola and Pepsi, when they sat back and they created Aquafina, they go, you know something? People need water. You know, we're going to put a price tag of $2 on a bottle. Someone's going to buy this because they need it. That's actually a really, really, really good, you know, strategy when it comes to being an entrepreneur. You know, start with things people need. Mm-hmm. You know, you need this because it's going to save time. It's going to make you money. It's going to make you more efficient, you know, versus I want it because I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Human nature says, you know, if it's something you want, you can postpone. If it's something you need, you're going to do what it takes to get what you need and survive. That whole survival instinct again. So.
Yeah, and survivor instinct, I think, is going to, I think, makes all the difference in the entrepreneur, the ideapreneur, the business operator. They're the people who, you know, I have friends who bought an existing business, but they really don't have the fire in their belly to overcome certain situations that come up in the business because they've never been in that survivor mode. I think when you're in survivor mode, your hustle's a little harder. Yeah, and the thing is too, I mean, this is one thing that really disappoints me about society and where the whole, you know, title of entrepreneurship is going. If you take a look on social media today, all right, you're gonna find everyone's an entrepreneur and everyone's a mentor, and the majority of them, you know, probably all of them are they're hacks, you know. They haven't done a damn thing. And what do? They post pictures of, hey, look at me with my Lamborghini, or look at me with my, you know, big house that I'm renting. And it's like, come on, guys. That's not what an entrepreneur is. I mean, you're building something because you have a different motivation. You know, money's easy. I mean, anyone can make a buck. And if you just do the math and focus on time value of the dollar, I mean, it's like, you can make a ton of money, but it's like it comes down to where you said people lose the fire because, I mean, money gets boring, you know, it's at some point. It's not that easy to be in business, to run that way. Some people think it's so simple. Yeah, it's hard work. It's hard work. And going back to the passion piece, you know, when I started Carolina Improv, it was like one of those accidental, you know, you talk about taking, let's say, MMA. I took something that I love to do. And actually, I would take improv refresher classes when I was struggling in my past, like when I worked in corporate. I would take an improv class to refresh my attitude because I knew the power that it had for my brain. And it was the retraining of the brain and the exercising of the brain. So when I got relocated to another city and they didn't have improv and they didn't know what it was, which is scary in itself, I had to create it to have it. And then it accidentally snowballed into a business that grew. Yeah. And the next thing it's funny you just said accidentally.
I mean, nothing's an accident when it comes to business, right?
Yeah. Well, I saw when I started to see, it goes back to some of what you're saying. All of a sudden, people had this super interest in it. They were intrigued by it. They didn't really know what it was. And then they would do it. And I'm going to guess that MMA kind of has that same effect. They would take an improv class and they would get a high. Their brain would get a high from doing it. And they would get a taste of it. Like, I want to keep doing it because it's the pursuit of mastery in improv, right? Where it's an intellectual. It's an intellectual pursuit of mastery.
I mean, so that's the ultimate business. Yeah. I mean, ultimate business is to create something that you can monetize, that you love doing, and others love doing it with you or for you. You know, something like that. So, I mean, that's the ultimate business. But the reality is, there are far few out there.
Yeah. You have a book coming out. I don't know, what is the book called?
So the book is called, here's a little play on words too. It's Never Broken, and the N is in parentheses. So it has a play on, one, I'm never broke financially, and two, life has never broken me. Yeah. And it goes through, I give lessons of, let's call it instinctual entrepreneurship, and having a survivor mentality kind of supports, being a highly successful entrepreneur. And what I've done is I've kind of weaved in these life stories and the lessons that I've learned or I've had to learn to kind of, survive and succeed. So it's pretty neat. I go through stress management. I get this whole thing for stress management. I could hit you with some of these strategies that I have, but I'm going to have to let you read the book. It's pretty neat.
Can you give us one strategy or one lesson from the book?
Yeah, I'll give you one. This is pretty neat. So this is going to blow everyone's mind. Ready?
Okay.
But you have other strategies that you have to use to build up to this one. Okay. This takes a lot of confidence. There's so much that goes into the strategy. Ready? Okay. So I'll give you the story. The premise is, I'm at a client, right? And this was a huge deal. This is like $1 billion deal. Okay. So I'm there. We're working. First session, I do my job, I get it sold. And the next thing is, so that's the morning session. So the afternoon session, I have to sit there and they're going to rip apart my proposal, right? So we break for lunch. We go downstairs. My team and all, we go to this little deli, and I'm like, I'm not in the mood for a sandwich. And I saw a sign that said homemade chili. And I go, I could do some chili. I like chili, So I get a bowl of chili, a nice warm, piece of bread, Italian bread. It was the best chili I've ever had, right? So I round up my team. We go upstairs. I'm like, hey guys, I'm full. My belly's good. My mind is focused. We're going to win this deal. So we go upstairs, and it's interesting, right? So now instead of it being a general discussion, we go into this like interrogation room, right? So there's no windows. It's one seat for their team, one seat for my team, and I'm sitting in front of this like FBI agent, with lights on me, and they're like drilling me on this proposal. So I'm like, okay. They say it's gonna last for 3 hours. So I'm like, all right, good. I'm ready for it. So we start getting into this, right? And you know something? Let me just tell you, 15 minutes into it, right? I get this like weird feeling in my stomach. I go, what the hell's going on here? Something's wrong. I go, okay, I'll be good. I keep answering the questions. Next thing you know, I start sweating. We're 30 minutes into it. Now I got this pain radiating throughout my body. My back is hurting, and I'm like, oh man, this doesn't feel good. Something's going on. By the time we got to an hour and a half, I mean, my ass was about to explode, right? And I was begging for a break, all right? And at this point, I am like pouring sweat, and the client must have thought that they had me on the ropes. And, I was going to beg for a break. And finally they go, we're going to take a quick break. I said, you sure about this? Because I could keep going if you want. So right there, the second we broke for 5 minutes, I sprinted to the bathroom. And guess what? I didn't make it. Right.
Oh, no.
And this is the greatest lesson of my life. Right. I'm sitting in the bathroom. And I shit my pants, all right? I had a suit on, shit's everywhere. And I'm sitting there, I look up and I say, God, I'm pretty good being proactive, being ready for any kind of situation. In 10 minutes, they're going to send a search party out to find me. What am I going to do, right? And I sat there and I raised my hand and I said to myself, I said, something? Shit happens. Just
literally.
Literally, shit happens. So you know what I did? I threw my drawers away. I went out into the bathroom. I cleaned the pants. I used that industrial dryer. I prepared myself mentally, and I went out. By the time I was like somewhat put together, I went out to the team. Everyone was sitting there. Their faces were like, what is going on? And they all realized that I was the idiot in the bathroom who shit his pants. And I said to the team, I said, hey guys, shit happens. Let's just deal with it. I'm here to win a project. Let's go. And they all perked up. They laughed their asses off. And I went in there and I won that project.
Wow.
And what I learned was, look, life is going to throw you curveballs. All right. Life is going to throw things at you that you're never going to expect. And sometimes you just have to realize shit happens. Accept it. Do the best you could. And the outcome is going to be great if you focus on what you went there to succeed with, you know? So that's one strategy. I mean, beyond anything else, accept it. I mean,
is that the title?
Embrace it. Is
the title of the chapter "Shit Happens"?
The title of the chapter is "Don't Bend Stress Management, Bend Don't Break." So, and that's actually one of the last sections. So,
oh, wow.
I mean, a little humor in there.
That's awesome.
It's actually a real scenario.
Those stories are so important because, you know, we had been talking about some of the hacks out there who say they're all this and they're all that. And the reality is that you have shit that comes up and happens, and it's the reality. And how do you just roll with it and not, you just gotta, well, you know, we do this in improv. It's just you improvise and you pivot to the next thing, and you don't let them see you sweat, and you just move on.
Yeah. I mean, too many people are preaching this, you know, perfect cycle of entrepreneurship and business. The reality is it is not perfect. It's hard to plan. I mean, things are going to happen that you can't control. And the fact is, I mean, if you're focused, if you don't give up, if you accept failure, and you allow yourself to adapt, you're going to be successful, you know? So, and too many people focus on, you know, their wrist full of Rolexes, their Armani suits, and their Lamborghinis. You know, it happens. I mean, they're not going to talk about it because they're, you know why? Because they're fake and they're fearful, you know, of the reality of, you know, the crap they're preaching. Yeah.
Well, you and I think really come from the same school of thought. I've always, I've stuck by being real, exactly who I am. Sometimes raw around the edges. Sometimes people don't like that. Sometimes people say you shouldn't put that on Facebook or in social media, whatever that might be. And now I've just come to learn this is who I am. You either like that, you don't like that, you want to work with me, you don't want to work with me. But trying to be what people want you to be is incongruent.
Yeah.
And it's not going to serve it's not going to serve anybody well.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. I mean, all those people that are they focus on being what society, you know, wants them to be. I mean, what happens to them? I mean, in many cases, the pressure takes over. I mean, you hear all these famous actors and business people, you know, they commit suicide and they just give up. Why? Because they're living a life of, you know, just being a fraud. You know, I mean, be real. Keep life easy.
I'm with you on that. When does your book come out?
It's going to come out September 25th, I believe, and it's going to be on pre-sale March 15th.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, we'll put that in the show notes. Since you have done so many different things, and you know, a lot of what I try to do with this show is talk about culture and moving cultures, changing cultures, fixing cultures. Any advice you can give based on your experience? Any advice you can give for shifting a stagnant or toxic culture?
So like organizational culture?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you think about this. I mean, cultures are developed by the people that lead them, you know? So, I mean, if there's a toxic culture, I mean, it really has to come from the top. I mean, if not, then, you know, I'll give you an example. The world of martial arts, okay? I mean, typically has a lead instructor or a Shihan sensei, whatever it may be. And that person defines the tone of the dojo. Okay. So whether there's going to be a high level of respect, yes sir, no ma'am, stuff like that, how they hand out belts, how you have to bow and things like that. I mean, they define that culture. So if that's the path that they want, that's what it's going to be. I mean, if they want to be more informal to where it's, hey, wear your jeans on Friday, we'll come in and do this, that. Don't call me sir, call me Paul, again, that's a culture that's being defined by the leader or the leaders of the organization. I mean, I know mixed martial arts, it sounds small and controlled, but the reality is even big business. I mean, culture cascades through the organization based on the tone of its leaders. And, when you start seeing organizations like IBM versus Google, to where IBM is very, 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 hierarchical, it's very structured versus Google, it's more flat to where they know who the owner is because he's with them, and, it just depends on where you're looking to move. I mean, shifting cultures, it's actually quite challenging because you have to have buy-in from the top. And if you don't, I typically recommend change the leadership, spark a new fire into the organization. And next thing you know, they could define how the culture is going to shift. And if you can lead with a new mindset, those will follow you with a new mindset.
What do you do? What do you do when you have leaders that there's nobody to change that leadership? What do you do with that? And what do you do with employees who end up quitting those managers and that leadership?
Well, this is really the big difference between the $1 million businesses and the $1 billion businesses.
Yeah.
It comes down to where, a leader is not someone who focuses on pride. They don't focus on, arrogance or ignorance. They focus on, the reality of the situation, and, they understand that they're there to grow as much as they're there to lead, and when they start accepting that, the people that work for them actually work with them to help them succeed, those are the ones that really grow. If you can't get through that mindset, what happens to the organization? It's either going to die, or it's only going to grow to a point to where, it's going to only people that allow that kind of culture are going to continue working there. It's you're only stagnating your growth. So that's why you see a lot of these, like, if you look at like S&P 500, if you take a look at the in the past 10 years, how many of them have really gone bankrupt or dissolved? Or lost their capacity to stay within that S&P 500. Something like more than 60% of them, because their leadership chose not to change. They stayed with this traditional mindset of, this is how we've done business. This is how we will always do business. And, those Google guys, they're a little googly, those Yahoo guys, they're Yahoo, so we don't want to be like that. So we're going to stay and be this, law firm or, whatever. So, and what happens? Times change, society changes, cultures change. You have to adapt. And if you don't adapt, you're going to lose. So,
well, let's take it. Let's flip the coin. What about advice for motivating and engaging your talent?
Motivating and engaging your talent. So this is actually, I just had a interview on this with, what was it, Fierce CEO magazine or something like that, to where you got to understand that, the culture of today's workforce is completely different than yesterday's.
Yeah.
And, money, cash is no longer the greatest motivator. Now it's more or less lifestyle, and the integration of that job with their lifestyle, is becoming the more dominant motivator. If you look at these, these top techies, right? Let's say I'm a developer, Google's going to pay me, let's say $150,000 a year. One, how much money do I really need to be happy? And if you start looking at their definition of happiness, their happiness is, I want to wake up at 11 o'clock. I want to go to work in my flip-flops. I want to eat all day at my desk. I want to go play badminton in the courtyard. Look, that's a lifestyle. And if that person is that good, give them the lifestyle that they need to excel. Don't try to put them in a box to where, hey, Ralph, you need to wear a suit every day. And we work from 9 to 5. But the reality is, poor Ralph, he doesn't even get motivated until 11 o'clock in the morning. So why are you trying to constrain his ability to be great? So I'd say top talent. I mean, if you want to keep talent, you need to start understanding what talent needs to be happy and motivated. Focus on their lifestyle versus their wallets. So.
Yeah. And then taking it one step further, let's talk a little bit about being the best possible leader you can be. Any advice, any best practices that have worked for you or clients on how to be the best possible leader? One pivotal thing that they can do.
Realize that you're not too big to work in the trench. And what I mean by that is, when a lot of these guys, these CEOs, they sometimes they get too big for their own teams, and they start, becoming disconnected with the reality of their organizations, and they start losing, visibility and sight of where the organization is, where it's going, and where it needs to be. And what happens is, those are the ones that, they either look for new leadership or they fail. So, my philosophy is keep it real. You're never too big to hang out and speak with the new guy. You're never too big to learn something from someone who's not in a position of authority. Remember that, we're all people and we're all here to learn and grow from each other. And, the day you stop believing that and think you're better than, others, that's the day you're that chump everyone wants fired. So, right?
I've met a lot of those chumps.
Yeah, there's too many of them out there. So,
oh my gosh.
So, I think they have their own chump club. So,
where do you get your support as a leader, as a CEO? It can be lonely at the top. Where do you get the mentorship and support you need?
So you just made a comment. It could be lonely at the top. For me, my reality is I'm not at the top. So I'm just another one of the guys to where, look, I have great ideas, and to implement and make those ideas a reality, I need great teams and people that want to work with me and people that I want to work with. So I never consider myself at the top. And, my life is not lonely. I have so many, great people that I work with and, really good associates. And, the fact is when I need to be the leader and the authoritative leader, I can be. But in most cases, if you have good people, good strategy, and, you're all on the same page, you don't need to be that guy, So,
I love that. I love that outlook.
Yeah. It's not about being on the top of the mountain, because it is lonely up there. And that's why so many people, do what they do.
I like that. I like that a lot. That was awesome. It was an unexpected response.
Yeah.
I love that.
Sorry about that.
No, I like that. I hate the predictable.
Yeah.
I like the interesting.
I'm so not the guy that's driving around in my Porsche and, when I drive up to the, look, if I need underwear, I'm going to go to Walmart. I'm not going to go to Bloomingdale's to go buy, a $70 pair of underwear because, only shit goes in it. So I'm going to go where everyone shops. And something, I don't need to drive a Porsche. It's all right, can I get one? Yeah, sure. But what happens with a Porsche? I got to park at the end of the aisle. It's going to get scratched. And I'm going to be that pretentious, prick who's going to say, get away from my Porsche. It's who needs that? That's a headache.
That's awesome. Well, hey, if people want to reach out to you, get a hold of you, know you more, what are some of the best ways that they can reach out to you?
So the best ways are to go to my website. It's Paul Szyarto. Don't try to spell it like it sounds. It's SZYARTO.com. Or we have a new really cool website going up called The Combat CEO, because, my life is about walking into a boardroom, dominating, getting what I need, working with my teams, and then walking into a dojo at times and, squaring off. So I got this whole philosophy on being a combat CEO and applying the techniques of, that combative mindset and that survivor mindset into the boardroom. So we got a new site. It's thecombatceo.com, and it's pretty neat.
I can't wait to see your book. Read your book.
Yeah, the book is going to be neat. So I'll send you a copy.
That'd be awesome. That'd be great. So, I feel akin to you in some way. Like we had a similar, I think yours was probably a little crazier than mine, but we've got some similar, maybe street smarts. Maybe that's where I'm going with it.
Here's the thing. I mean, as long as it was crazy and we could relate, that's all that matters.
It's all that matters. So. Yeah, I like a little crazy. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on our podcast today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Gina.
You've been listening to The Pivotal Leader with Gina Trimarco, owner and founder of Pivot 10 Results and Carolina Improv Company. You can find show notes for this episode on our website at thepivotalleader.com. The Pivotal Leader is a production of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. If your company needs help pivoting to success, visit pivot10results.com or email Gina at pivot10results.com. And until next time, if you're feeling stuck in your business, it's probably time to pivot.